guys, welcome to my channel for Integral Bodywork. This video is about the Centaur, which is a very strange word to pronounce in English, but I'm just gonna go ahead and try. The Centaur is a metaphor, and I'm sure you guys know the mythical creature of the Centaur. It's a horse with the torso of a human being, and it's opposed to another metaphor of the rider on the horse. So what that means, I'm gonna go to in a second. First, let's talk about your mind and your body. When you're born, there's just body. There's nothing there yet that we would call mind, or that is comparable to what we now have as a mind. The mind develops over the next years. So when you're born, you're just identified with your body because there's just nothing else there. Later in life, the mind and the ego develop, and so what usually happens is that you identify with your ego and you disidentify from your body. So most people are identified with their ego. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a normal state on a particular stage of being. What that means is that you're identified with your goals in life, with your thoughts, with your personality traits, with your relationships, with what you can do well or what you can't do well, stuff like that. But you're not identified with your body anymore. And so here's where the metaphor comes into play, because the body in that scenario is the horse on which the person rides. So the person is the ego, the horse is the body, and the body is just there to get the person from A to B. The person or the ego is the thing that wants to move around in the world, that wants to do stuff, and it kind of needs a body to do all those things, but it's pretty suspicious of the body because the body can get sick and it will die sooner or later. It will get old and wrinkly and all of that stuff. It's a pretty unpleasant thing. And so you use it and you feed it and you move it around so it stays healthy, but otherwise you just kind of keep a distance from it. So the Centaur, on the other hand, that's a whole new stage, and it's totally different from the last stage because it's identified with the whole body-mind. There is no distinction between body and mind anymore, because on the Centaur stage you realize that the distinction between body and mind is actually an idea of the mind. It's an idea that is put over the body-mind and it's totally artificial. So you just drop that idea altogether and you're identified with your mind and your body, and that means that you get the best of both. So on the lower stages, the ego would suppress the impulses of the body in order to let it function just smoothly like a horse should. But on the Centaur stage, the impulses are actually set free. So it's kind of similar to the lower stages where it's very impulsive and spontaneous, but the Centaur can actually choose if it's appropriate to carry the impulses out or not. Whereas on the lower stage you can't do that because you don't feel the impulse anymore. And so what happens to the impulses also happens to the emotions. And so this stage of the Centaur is often called the authentic self as opposed to the false self, because the authentic self accepts all of the parts that belong to your personality, and you don't suppress them anymore. You see them as part of yourself and not something that's in the outside world that you have a problem with. That's what the ego does. But on the authentic self stage, you accept that there's a greedy you, there's a son of a bitch you, there's a cheating you, whatever. It's just part of yourself, and so yourself kind of gets bigger and more integrated. And so the same happens with the emotions, which means that you can live all of your emotions more or less freely. You're not completely free yet, but there's no major suppression anymore. You don't have, for example, a general problem with rage anymore. Okay, so now you know what the metaphor stands for. Now I want to talk about two key differences that set the Centaur apart from the ego. The first one is that it is driven by being needs as opposed to deficiency needs. I'm sure you guys know Maslow and his pyramid of needs, and he actually talked about two different sets of needs that are not too well known. I don't know why. He talked about deficiency needs and being needs, and the deficiency needs are those that we actually know. So deficiency needs would be stuff like hunger, security, being accepted in your society and stuff like that. So it's actually you lack something and you have to get something to fill that hole, and then you're complete again. So that's how deficiency needs work. Being needs, on the other hand, there is no lack. There's actually an overflow. There's too much of something. You want to get it into the world. There's so much energy and drive and love and and compassion in your being that you want to get it into the world and share it with the other people. So that's a huge difference. And the Centaur is actually driven by being needs and not by deficiency needs anymore. Doesn't mean that he doesn't have deficiency needs because he gets hungry and thirsty like the rest of us, but it means that he's not controlled by those needs anymore. I know that's kind of hard to imagine because we're also used to deficiency needs that we can't imagine something else. But just think of hunger for a moment. In our society, hunger is not an issue. You get hungry, you go out, get some food, and you're done. Or you decide, okay, no, it's not appropriate. I'm in a meeting. I'm gonna get food in half an hour. No problem. Even if, let's say, you can't get any food because the store is closed. Okay, so you got to stay hungry for another, I don't know, 60 minutes. No problem at all. But when we come to things like sex or when we come to human connection, it's getting very difficult and very complicated. So imagine we could deal with those needs the same way we deal with hunger, because that's actually how the Centaur lives day to day. It's just like part of a normal day is dealing with those needs and fulfilling them, or not if it's not possible, but it's not an issue. You have to desire for human connection. You just go out and talk to someone. You want sex, you go out and you have sex. And if you don't get it, it's not an issue. You get it tomorrow, whatever. So it just gets really, really simple. And that leads to the being needs, because when you're disidentified from those deficiency needs and they don't take up so much room anymore, you actually start to overflow with fullness and with drive and love and energy, and you want to get it into the world. And if you don't, you feel bad because there's so much in you. You want to share it with the world. You get up in the morning and you're so excited for the new day. It's like a puppy. That's actually a good picture. It's like a puppy. You're so happy and excited and joyful that you want to share it with other people. It's not enough to keep it for yourself. So that's being needs. And that's one of the key differences that sets the Centaur apart from the ego. The second difference is the ego project, because the ego is something that lives in time. There's a past, a present, and a future, and you remember the past and you project into the future, you make plans, you have goals in life, and that's all fine, but it's very imprecise because you can plan all of your life. You can plan your career, how many kids you want, you can plan the house that you're going to build, but if tomorrow you get hit by a bus, you're dead and it's tough luck. And so the Centaur actually stops with the planning because you realize that all of that planning just keeps you out of the present moment. Because the future is actually nothing more than an abstraction of this present moment. It's something you think of in this present moment. And you can do that all of your life, and many people actually do. You plan and you plan and you plan and you plan, and then you get retired, and that's what you planned for. But then you keep on planning, because what else are you going to do? You didn't do anything else in all of your life, and the Centaur stops. But that doesn't mean that you can't plan anymore if you're on the Centaur stage, because the Centaur still has the mind and it's working totally fine. But it means that you look at the plans just as they are. They are plans. And if they don't work out, you just make new ones. That's it. So plans lose a lot of their importance on the Centaur stage. And well, those are the key differences. Okay, that being said, there's one more thing that I need to talk about, and that is the difference between the Centaur stage and the Centaur state. Because most of you will know the Centaur state. It's a state you get into, you feel very connected to your body, you probably even forget yourself. You feel like a puppy running around, having fun and jumping and hugging people and whatever. You just feel very alive and in the moment and connected with your body. And the Centaur stage is a different thing, because the state has a beginning and an end. You get into it, you get out of it, and you're in your normal stage of being again. Now, being on a Centaur stage doesn't mean that you're in that state all of the time, because when you think about it, that wouldn't really work out, would it? But it means that you're very grounded in that state and that it's at your disposal. So you can get into it very easily and you don't lose it so quickly anymore. That's what being on the Centaur stage means. Now, I've talked a lot about the bright sides of the Centaur, but there's also a dark side. And when you think about it, you dissociate it from your body for a reason, because your body gets sick, it gets old, and it dies. And that is something that will hit you in the face when you come closer to the Centaur. Many people get very anxious at that point, and they are afraid of dying or afraid of having an accident and stuff like that. And that just means that you get closer to actually reality. Because when you're identified with your ego, you can always push death out of your consciousness by focusing on your plans. Kind of like, I'm not gonna die tomorrow because I made plans for the whole week. That's how the ego works. But the Centaur doesn't work like that anymore. So pain will get more painful. If you get sick, you will suffer a great deal. And just as much as joy gets more joyful and sex is more fun. And so all of that stuff will just get amplified. Something else that many people report when they get closer to the Centaur stage is fear of losing control. Because the closer you get to the Centaur stage, the more you will have to let go and let your body run its course. And that means you don't know if you're gonna punch your friend in the face if he makes you angry. And you might end up in the street running around naked. And so many people feel very anxious about that the closer they get, but that's actually a good sign, because it just means you're closer and closer to the Centaur stage and more connected to your body and your impulses. And well, I think you just gotta risk it. All right, so that's it from me. If you want to know more about the Centaur, I suggest you read No Boundary by Ken Wilber. And if you have any questions, just leave them in the comment section. And otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.